Welcome to our Blue Margin Expert Insights series. We're glad you joined us. This series is for private equity and mid-market executives who want to increase their company value, their portfolio value through data transformation. I'm Blue Margin's co-founder, John Thompson, and today I'm hosting Karen Posey, founder and CEO of KP Strategies. Founded in 2016, KP Strategies is a Denver-based CEO consultancy. They work hand in hand with CEOs to navigate challenges and opportunities and to build success stories. In short, they help CEOs put the bulk of their time on the things that only they can do, their highest and best use. They offer a 6-month CEO accelerator cohort, a program giving CEOs the best practices and tools they need to execute their strategic plans. Karen has extensive experience in strategic planning, organizational alignment, and customer experience. She's the current forum chair, for Women's Business Enterprise Council and an executive in residence at both Rev1 Ventures and the Entrepreneurs Center. Hi, Karen. Welcome.
Hi, John.
So to begin with, could you share a little bit about your career journey with our audience? What brought you to this place that made you the CEO whisperer and so on?
Thank you. It's as I reflect, it's interesting. I started my career in sales leadership. Then I ran an IT infrastructure company for 8 years. And then I went on to work for a management consulting firm. And then, my last kind of big corporate role, I was head of strategy and consumer experience for a $10 billion healthcare payer. And I then, decided, geez, how about I run this medtech startup? And so I was CEO of a medtech startup, and we found out we were too late to market. So from there, I decided, I think it's time I started my own business. So started KP Strategies, and I was so passionate being an entrepreneur leading a medtech startup that to this day I still work with CEOs, as you mentioned, as an executive in residence. So
That's great. You broke a lot of glass ceilings along the way, it sounds like. I'm curious, so you were in all sorts of high level, high responsibility, probably broad scope, the kind of jobs where you think, now, how is it that one person can't manage their own backyard? Someone else can run an enterprise company. Did you find that to be sort of an interesting science along the way and find, begin to lay the groundwork for how you overcome some of those chronic issues that leaders of large organizations deal with? And that's what led you here?
yeah, really, it's very interesting when I reflect back. I constantly my changes in my career, I kind of reinvented myself several times, and I just always was looking for the next challenge. Right? My husband would always get mad at me. He's like, "You're doing great, babe. Why do you need to go conquer the next thing?" And I'm like, because I need to. It's just that driving force. But yes, it's you know. When I made the transition from working from a management consulting firm where you give recommendations and share key findings, and you help them with onboarding with your recommendations and key findings, but then you leave, right? It was interesting when I had a strategy and consumer experience at that large payer, the $10 billion payer I was telling you about. That's where you kind of look behind the curtain and you really see what goes on, right? And trying to drive alignment, that became 70% of my job, was driving alignment with these, the core team, the senior leadership team, the 50 directors that we had in a large organization like that. Keeping organizational alignment was tough. So that, yes, it really helped me as I started my business to be able to look at the difference between running a startup, running, something under 10 million, and then what it really takes in the mid-market when you've got a board and other people you've got to answer to.
So that's really all interesting, and I've experienced some of that myself, not to that scale. Is that alignment issue? So you're sitting on top of an organization, or you're over a large department, and you're trying to coordinate it to get economies of scale, and to not have additive value of all these people and resources, but multiplicative and exponential value. Is that Is that the core of the CEO challenge, or is that just one of many?
I think, a couple of things that I see with CEOs is, in the mid market, where I specialize in, like Blue Margin, some of the biggest challenges they face is one, a lot of them are getting mediocre growth. And it's really challenging in that I find it challenging because when you really pull the covers back and you start asking these CEOs, the bottom line is over 65% of CEOs don't have the confidence they need to make the bold moves to the business. Well, that's why they're getting mediocre growth. A lot of them, a couple times a year, I get asked to help facilitate a strategic planning session. And what they want is a certified facilitator to facilitate sessions with their leadership team where they sit around the table and figure out what they're going to do for the next couple of years because they want that board check mark. Well, it's no surprise they're getting mediocre growth. There are key strategies to give them the confidence they need that we can talk about a little later. But bottom line is mediocre growth is a big challenge. Second one is that, being a CEO is a lonely job. It's a very lonely job. And it's an interesting stat that just came out. Over 61% of CEOs that are lonely, guess what? They have poor performance. So they're struggling with performing in the organization because they're lonely. They don't have what I call a kitchen cabinet. Andrew Jackson, really, former president, coined that phrase. Having that group of peers that you can talk to and really share things with is so important. And that's why I've created this cohort in my master class or in our CEO accelerator. So that's the second thing. The third big challenge I find is that CEOs really struggle when they are growing. If they're in that market or they're doing the right things on the growth side, they're really growing. But guess what? Operations can't keep up. And so they're having a lot of trouble in operations, billing bills not going out on time, receivables, cash flow overall, could be IT infrastructure. So that's the third. And I think the fourth biggest challenge I see, which kind of leads in from the third challenge, is just overall transparency. The board wants it. The CEO desperately needs it to really work with their leadership team, but they don't have it. And transparency is a big deal.
Yeah, and if they're stretched thin, the last thing they want to do is process work, aggregating numbers, building reports, and so on. I've felt that pain myself. Hey, do you want me to produce or you want me to give you reports? Which one?
Exactly.
Well,
Exactly.
all of those are really interesting points. The loneliness one is not so much someone, walking in the rain wishing they had a friend, but someone who is in a very difficult struggle. And even if their instincts are dead on every step of the way, they can't know that unless they're some sort of freakish genius, some Elon Musk or something. Unless there's those around them to say, I've got the same issue. Every time we have gotten into a brain trust, a cohort, we kick ourselves and say, we are never not doing that again. And I'm not just blowing sunshine your way. I think it's critical because you need confirmation. You need commiseration. Hiring a sales leader is difficult. All that stuff is challenging. And it's great to get that feedback because it gives you the oomph you need. And just trying to sustain that through sheer, what's inside your head and force of will is near impossible, at least in my experience. Is that what you found?
Absolutely. And it's interesting. I've been leading a group of 14 CEOs since 2019. And it's the same thing. Yes, they love being together. It's a lot of benchmarking and making sure that they're staying in line. Everything from not only their high tech IT CEOs, not only from the services they're offering, the compensation, how, talk about something that's really changed as well is how you go to market from a sales standpoint. That has forever changed since the pandemic. So yeah, it is being a part of some kind of community or mini mastermind or mastermind where you can really have that kitchen cabinet of peers just to share information is critical.
You also mentioned operations, which is obviously half the battle at least. Coming from the biz dev side of things, the marketing, the commercial side, I hear from our CEOs cohort that one of the biggest challenges is how do you get demand in the market? How do you get enough sales? That's sort of the fuel to the fire. Is that a common issue? And do you guys work on that in your cohorts?
Absolutely, 100%. Yes, we do. And matter of fact, that's why I have a lot of partners that I pull in to help with some of those conversations. So, marketing and sales has forever changed, and how the key strategies you use in in the value of the website and the value of how you're positioning yourself. It's interesting. I'll give you a silly example, but it's so important. Content is everything now, right? And social media. I mean, people want to see your content, and you guys do a great job of that. Um, our company, we try to do that as well, but content is king. People don't want to, they don't want you to hear about you boast about your company. They want to hear what you have to share and what your thought leadership is. And that's a big change as well.
When you talk about transparency and the need for that, the board needs to see what's happening, the company needs to see what's happening. Do you have any stories of CEOs who don't have data visibility? What's that been like for them? How do you address that with them?
Yeah, boy, John, I've got lots of stories. The board demands a lot. I've got a company right now. They are 60 million, and they're running their company on Excel spreadsheets. And it's the classic of they've grown so rapidly. And this is one of the examples I gave earlier where operations just hasn't kept up. They've tried dashboards in the past, and they just have not been able to get where they haven't been able to get over the hump. And so actually this is an example where I have brought Blue Margin in, and you guys are helping here, because one of the biggest things that they didn't have is they didn't have a repository for all their data. So it was hard for them to have effective dashboards if they couldn't even start with a basic data lake. So we just did the workshop with Blue Margin and this client to really look at what are their biggest priorities. And we came down to two, right? There's two huge priorities they need for their business right now, that they need dashboards to give them total transparency. So yeah, that's one example. Another example is I just started working with a new client. They're about 75 million, and they have some level of sophistication. They've got some workflows. They've done Power BI, but they still are struggling with their dashboards. And it's kind of the classic of they'll work for a while and then they break. They'll work for a while and then they break. They've got some expertise in house, and I'm in the process of kind of working with them to figure out, okay, do they have a data lake? Where is their data? And so we're just in process there. But I mean, those are just two examples. But candidly, this is so important. Not only when they CEOs do the 6-month accelerator, are they getting their 3-year strategic plan done, their yearly operations plan done? But one of the other key things that we focus on is financial alignment, because I am blown away every day at how many organizations I work with that don't have their 3-year strategic plan aligned to their financials overall, and they don't have their yearly plan aligned to their budgets. And so, what happens is it's the classic. One of the organizations I'm working with right now, the issue is there's, everybody kind of turns in a budget, but nobody's really managing to a budget, and they can't figure out why they're having cash flow issues. And it's like, okay, wait a minute. It's one of my favorite books is Fit for Growth. And so really what it talks about is at the end of the day, organizations need to be able to have that financial alignment so they can say, hey, Bill, Joe, Sue over here. All right, you got the core businesses. Hang on, keep doing what you're doing, but I'm going to reduce your budget by 15% because Joanne over here, we've all agreed she's got the growth for the company. She's leading the growth initiative. We're going to give that money to her because we got to hit the gas over here, right? That's what's missing in so many organizations when they don't have financial alignment. It's a huge problem.
It's saying yes to everything, which is not saying yes to anything, right?
100%.
It's funny. It's deceptively difficult to develop a data platform that really drives that transparency and that ability to get aligned. We work in the same realm, mid-market. We'd estimate 95% conservatively of companies are working on Excel still. Uh, when it comes to CEOs and other key leaders being in a cohort, but CEOs especially, do you have a guesstimate of what percent out there in the mid-market are actually involved in a formal cohort and getting that support?
I don't, but here's what I find interesting. I did read a stat, and just anecdotally, I'm hearing from folks, things are changing. Things are really shifting. People don't want to go all day. And this organization will remain nameless, but people don't want to go all day and sit in a meeting with the cohorts where they're talking about, they'll have a guest speaker, maybe talk about a couple challenges, and then they all go home. CEOs today really want to work smarter versus harder. They want to get in, learn what they want to learn, and get what they need. And they want to be able to really work with, their cohorts, if they can, in a virtual platform. I mean, they don't mind occasionally getting together, but they really want to do things smarter now. They just don't have the time to burn all these on-site meetings. And ironically, some of the chairs, I've got 7 chairs of this group that will remain nameless that are now following me. So I don't know. I think I'm doing something right, John.
Yeah, yeah, I think you are. It's interesting when you mentioned execution and the challenge around that, and I think often as executives and business owners, we're looking for that person that has the X factor that executes. It's amazing. You can have someone with, Stanford MBA and great credentials, and it seems like they can't get stuff done. I don't know that it comes down to a certain DNA. I think it comes down to framework and how you approach it. How do you help CEOs that are struggling with execution generally?
Yeah, it's 92% of executives struggle overall with execution. That's a big stat. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. But overall, where I help them is first and foremost looking at where are they going? What's their vision clarity? Let's reframe what really winning means for their organization. I'll give you an example. Reed Hastings, who's former CEO of or co-founder of Netflix, I'm a big believer. Mission is timeless. Vision is 10 years out. And then strategic, what I call strategic intent is 3 years out. And that's why I work on the strategic plan, 3 years. I want to know where they want to be in 10 years, but let's get down to the 3 years and really focus on that. And then we work on the yearly operations plan. Well, it's interesting. Reed at the time looked at Netflix and said, I really need to reframe what winning means. I want to look 20 years out and let me dream of what Netflix should be. And he said, I want to be the global entertainment channel, distribution channel. Now, think about that.
Bold.
Yeah, extremely bold. In today's world, you got to be bold. As CEOs, you've got to make those bold moves. But what's interesting about that is, if we really think about it, if he had just said, and we can all hear this, right? How many, when you look at people's websites or you talk to organizations, how many say, let's take the Netflix example. I want to be the premier DVD company in the world, right? Or I want to be the premier X supplier in the world. So many organizations say that. Well, if Netflix would have said that, their company would have been called DVD by mail and they'd be out of business.
For sure. They'd be Blockbuster.
Yeah.
In fact, Blockbuster was one step behind, jumped into the DVD business late.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So I just really, execution is so important. But you know what? John, here's why I get so passionate about this. There's so many organizations out there that can do strategic planning. But what I've learned over the years, and the reason I created my company, is because most people don't understand strategic planning. If you really want to get out there and drive sustainable, predictable growth, you need insight from your customers, your employees, and your key stakeholders, and you need some market intelligence. That's what gives CEOs the confidence to make the bold moves. It's not just sitting around a table trying to get a check mark with your board. It's really getting that insight. And then once you have that insight, then you can feed that into your SWOT for your strategic plan to really know where your 3-year plan, where do you need to focus, right? In the example I gave earlier, Where do you need to hit the gas? What's going to be your growth area? Where do you need to hold steady? And really focus on those areas and get after it. And then put your yearly operations plan together to deliver. And when you do that, that helps immensely with execution. But I'll be honest, that's just the first step. I think what really separates our organization is we're not afraid to get our hands dirty. Because guess what? This is where the rubber meets the road on organizational alignment. When you're talking about how you're the design of the organization, the financial alignment, as we've already talked about, and then you look at the culture and the talent. 72% of the success of any organization revolve around culture and talent. And you know what? Candidly, I find that a lot of CEOs don't put the time there. They don't. They delegate it. And that's a missed opportunity. And that's why the other thing we focus a lot of time and attention on is educating CEOs on doing the things that only they as the CEO can do. And then even with their leadership team, which is, clearly the linchpin in any organization, making sure you've got a high performance leadership team also is critical for execution. But then making sure that your high performance leaders also know what are those things that only you can do as a COO, or only you can do as a CFO, or only you as a VP of sales, and so on and so forth, right? That's what's important, because so many organizations I work with, they're so busy. The C-suite is so busy kind of managing and not leading.
Yeah. So they're not struggling to find enough to do. I know this struggle.